Hi and welcome. I'm Peggy Caruso, and I am the host of the Revolutionized podcast. I am the owner of Life Coaching and Beyond, an 8-time entrepreneur, author, executive, and personal development coach. This is my 4th book coming out next month, so I'm super excited about that. And all of my books have been trademarked through the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And as you know, I always have some interesting guests, and today we have a very interesting guest. But I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell you a little bit about what he does. Hi, Derek.
Aloha. How are you today?
I'm doing well, and I'm so happy to have you.
I am so grateful for being here. Thank you so much. It's always funny when people ask you to tell a little bit about yourself, right? Because it's like there's always these crazy starting points to begin. But I think that something that's important for people to understand is where I came from and how I got to where I am today. You know, it's funny, I'm actually out here in my hometown, which I'm surrounded by peach orchards and vineyards, and it's a very small town in Colorado. And I just remember growing up, like I just couldn't wait to get away from here because it was just too small town. There wasn't enough to do. And the older I'm getting, I'm actually excited about being back here and spending more time where it's quiet and peaceful. But that really sent me on a journey to really figure out what I wanted in my life. And at the time when I started out, I didn't understand, but freedom was super important in my life and has really been the one core value next to love, of course, that I've carried throughout my whole life. And that really started at 7 years old when I started my first business, actually shoveling sidewalks, which led to mowing lawns, which led to raking leaves, which led eventually to actually doing newspaper delivery. And that carried all the way through into my first major job of picking peaches, working in the orchards, and then to, of course, some random jobs from there and there. But I started my first company when I was 20 and failed miserably after about a year and a half of doing that, and kind of went back into the corporate world, realized I didn't like that because I've been fired a lot of times. So I pretty much knew that I really needed to work for myself. And at 25, I actually got introduced to an opportunity where I started a construction company, which led to real estate. And that company actually blew up to be worth about $40 million, and then a real estate company that did about $20 million. And so it rose from 25 to 31 fairly quickly, became a multimillionaire. And then the economy hit in 2008, but it wasn't necessarily the economy that really put me back in my seat or humbled me. It was the fact that I was making really bad decisions with all of the money I had. And I was just going down a path that wasn't leading me anywhere except for death and destruction. And so luckily, all that came crashing down, and I had to start over at square one at the age of 40, which was not an easy feat by any stretch of the imagination. So 6 years ago, and I technically actually 38. And so it's been an interesting, fun climb, but that led me back into the world that I am now, because ultimately, to come back around, that's when I figured out that I really wanted that all-important freedom in my life. And that's why I had started those businesses, 7, 8, and so on and so forth. And I didn't actually have that when I was a small business owner. So luckily now, after a lot of hard work and figuring things out, I actually run a business from where I can work from anywhere in the world. I created myself the laptop dream, as they say. As long as there's internet connection, I'm good to go. But I really figured some things out recently, is that we help wellness entrepreneurs like gym owners and kickboxing owners and physical fitness owners grow and scale their businesses through Facebook ads and funnels without them having to worry about all of the tech side or managing the stuff or the heavy lifting of the day-to-day Facebook stuff. So basically they can, spend their life the way that they want and get paid for the value they create. And I'll tell you what, it's been an interesting up and down journey along the way, to say the least.
Okay, so talk about some of the clients that you have. What is the biggest thing that you can tell everyone who's listening as to like why they should hire you? What do you do that's so special?
That's a really great question, Peggy. You know what? I would love to take a step back from that and answer that question, because ultimately, I'll tell you, in the second career, if I could give anybody's advice that I've learned, is 100%, if you don't take anything else away from this entire podcast of what I'm sharing with you today, is stay in your core genius and surround yourself with people who are greater at the things two things. One, you don't like doing. And the second one, the areas that you're just, simply weak at and you just can't do, because it's beautiful when you find the right people to lift you up. and allow you to stay in your core genius. And that's made all the difference in my business. And just a few years ago, when I started back in this online world, I thought I had to know everything. I thought I had to do everything. I went from having 40 employees, 60 subs to basically just down to myself. And I thought to myself moving forward, like, you know what, I'm just going to learn everything on my own. The reality is life doesn't work that way. And it took me a few years to figure out as I just needed to surround myself with people. So the perfect clients we work with now, I'll give you a perfect example. This just happened. So we run Facebook ads for ourselves. We run Facebook ads for our clients. We just ran Facebook ads out there. I think we did a 2-week campaign, $416. And we just landed ourselves a client who runs $18,000 a month in just Facebook ads. And that has been one of the biggest things I've learned is stay in my core genius and making sure I'm running paid campaigns. Because ultimately, when you get out there in the world, you got to get your message in front of enough people in the beginning to figure out what that is, to test it, and then ultimately make sure you really figure out what your hook and offer is so that when you're speaking directly to the person, you're here to help, they hear you, they click, and they actually end up talking to you. And next thing you know, you're in a conversation with a qualified client who you definitely know you can serve, and they know that you can help them out.
Awesome answer. So I met you years ago, and I just think you're the most lovely, interesting person. And one thing that I always say is that you're always happy. And so I noticed, if you remember, when I met you, you were in the decline in your construction company. But the most fascinating thing was that you just weren't going to settle for defeat. And that reminds me of myself as well. So talk to me a little bit, and maybe everyone who's listening, give them some words of encouragement, because I could do the same. I've been up, down, all around as well. And business isn't easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. So what would you tell people, as you've done, like you started out and then you failed, and then you started out, then you maybe had a setback. So what would you tell them as words of encouragement as to keep going?
Peggy, you were spot on. The entrepreneurial journey is exactly that. It's a journey. And, 20 years now I've worked for myself, coming up on 21 next year. And at the end of the day, back in the day, I think it was old school. It was like, set your goals. We learned this together because we met each other literally in the downcline and also the rebirth of where I was going. And if there's something I've learned, there's an old school way of doing things and a new school way of doing things. And the old school is setting the goals, setting your date. I need to achieve it by December 31st, 2019 at midnight. Where I found out for myself is I needed to focus on what my vision was. And when I have my vision in front of me, and I just truly believe in my heart of hearts that if I focus enough attention and actually take the right action, I'm going to get some feedback and I can adjust accordingly. And then I can just keep optimizing over and over and over. All of that is, I believe, the tactics. But what I really believe inside, and this was the biggest lesson I learned in my entire life, well, one of them, I should say, is that really at the end of the day, it's about understanding to have forgiveness for yourself, forgiveness for all the people around you, and to really trust and move forward that everything will fall into place. And I truly believe that in my heart of hearts that it will, and it has, and it does. And it proves itself time and time again. And if we didn't have these setbacks in life, we literally wouldn't become the people who we are today. Because nobody out there goes from 0 to 1,000 miles an hour without setbacks. Sure, there are people that are born with these amazing talents, right? I'm not 6'7" and can dunk a basketball. I'm not 6'2" and 250 and can run over people on a football field. But something that we all everybody has in common is a willingness, the ability to take action, and every day to make the choices that you think are the best choices that you can make. And if you just trust that process and understand there's no destination, it's 100% of the journey. It's 100% of the experience. Those experiences are what carry you forward and allow you to really truly enjoy this life as a human being for less than 100 years. So that has just been a huge gift through all of this that I've learned.
Well, you are a gift. I think, like I said, I think you're an amazing person. And I love when you talk about imagination because that's one of the mental muscles that Bob Proctor has always taught. And I think
Mhm.
imagination is key in anything. Like you said, even, when you're going to set your goals, it's not so much the old fashioned way of saying it's going to happen by midnight on that day, but to envision your dream, to see,
Yes.
and then it's a motivator and it moves you into action, and we are energy, and so that action is attraction. It can't fail you if you truly believe in your abilities. We all have abilities, talents and
Yes.
abilities, and so if you have that belief and with that imagination, you can't fail.
You literally cannot fail. And if you want to supersize that, my suggestion is to journal. Journal as often and as much as you can because it allows you to get those thoughts and that vision out of your head and on paper because it really goes through all of the energies, right? From the thought to the words, to the writing, to the reading, to the speaking them, or however you go about doing it. And it really gives you that path to go down. And from that, I love the saying where everything starts from intention and then you give it attention and then energy flows and action takes place. And those four things happen whether you purposely and consciously do them or you don't, because we are humans and we're put here to thrive and we're meant to keep moving forward. That's just how it works. And when you keep that in the forefront of your mind, it's literally pulling you forward to where you want to go. So you better be very aware and intent about what direction you want to go because you will go that way.
I think that one of the things that I teach all my clients is that just as a house has a foundation, you have to have a mental foundation, and it consists of several things. It consists of meditation, which is mindfulness and quieting your mind. I think that's very
Mhm.
important. Gratitude, positive affirmations are absolutely amazing, and they really do train your mind. But journaling is the fourth one, and you talked about that. And I try to get my clients to journal, and they don't understand. It doesn't mean you have to write a book. It just
Right.
it consists of several things, like you said, writing things down, but it also tracks your progress because you can look at your negatives and you can say after a year, wow, I used to stay stuck in that for X amount of time and I'm only stuck in it for a minute. I mean,
Yes.
you see the benefit of that journaling? Like most successful people in the world journal.
I, Journaling, and I'll tell you, there's been so many times that I sat down to journal, which is only 2 or 3 pages a day. And I just keep, chronological journal. When it's filled up, I go to the next one. Sometimes I'll journal for like 30 days in a row, maybe not every weekend. And then I'll go for like 2 or 3 weeks and I'll forget to journal and then I'll start journaling again. And I'll tell you that the best place to start journaling and the best place and what place I had to start over with in my career is I had to start over at my values. And if you really start writing down what your core values are and where you're coming from, it's an easy place to grow from. Because ultimately what you're doing is whether you believe in God, the universe, whatever you believe in, you're really speaking to a higher power, if you will, and explaining to them, these are the things I struggle with, these are the things that I desire, these are the things I need some direction on. And by doing that, you're growing a relationship with yourself because ultimately this all boils down to, right, really is outside of a relationship with yourself and your higher power is growing relationships with people in the world. I mean, that's why I ultimately think we are really here is to help other people live a life based on our experiences and hope that they don't make the same mistakes. But everybody's got to make their own mistakes. So you're spot on. Writing things down. I've literally written probably 100 times or more. I don't know what to write right now. And amongst writing that line, there's this thought that just pops into your head and it just takes you down a whole nother path. And it's just the most beautiful thing, hands down.
Before we end the podcast, I would like to touch on one other subject that I heard in the very beginning. And as you know,
Mhm.
I do executive corporate coaching and I do personal development as well. I have children that I help. That's the intention of writing my books is to start a nonprofit for a child's academy.
Awesome. I love that.
No, and I love children. I'm very passionate about it. I do stay at home moms and career changes and all of those things. But with all of that being said, I think it's really important, like when you talked about having a job as a child, I think that's
Mhm.
super important. I've met so many people along my own journey that really teach and believe that it's really healthy for children. And I do because I teach success principles to children. And that's
Mhm.
part of it is giving them responsibilities, chores at home, score the chore. And, having a job at a very young age, I I think it's really important to teach them like how to contribute to a household financially, and just some of the things that you don't get compensated for, financially, that are just parts that you need to do to help. So how do you feel about that? I mean, you definitely feel that having a job as a child is good because you had one. So
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, there's countless hours I did chores growing up, working out here which were peach orchards at the time, now they're vineyards. Countless hours of doing things. And at the time, I hated them. I didn't understand why I needed to be out there, right? Um, but looking back now, I understand that that really built confidence. It built in choice, decisions that I made on a daily basis. And it really allowed me to start understanding how I could create my own path. And ultimately, I think it really wraps up as a unit is when you have a job at a younger age, you start understanding that you have to play with a team of people. And as the saying goes, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go to further, go together. And I think that really embodies all of that, because when you see kids that are on, and I did both sports where I played with a team, and I did sports where I just did individual things. And I can tell you that there's a lot of drive and that comes from doing the individual sport, but there's really an understanding about how to be able to work with the team when you're doing team sports. And that's no different in a career. It builds that confidence, because there's something about going out and earning your first dollar at a young age, because it just gives you, I don't know, I just can't speak enough about that confidence that builds. And ultimately, I think the real leaders in the world come from those stages in life. There's just this innate pulling forward of wanting to make something more than what they are, because we're here to thrive on this planet, hands down. Don't have any children myself, but I love children. In fact, I even donate to a couple nonprofits. And it sounds like I'll be donating to a new nonprofit that you're starting. So
I will be hitting you up.
Absolutely, because the children are the future. I think that's a huge piece. And I don't think that every kid should get a participation medal. It's like, I think that's something that needs to be earned.
I agree with you. I think that, it's not being mean to the children. It's teaching them, like you said, the core values. And you and I have the exact same thought process. So I'm super proud of you, how many times you've been knocked down and get back up. And I'm there as well. Like I said, if it was easy, everybody do it. So I've been very fortunate that I've reached success, but there were times where you think, oh, I don't know if I'm going to make it.
That's part of the growth, right?
Yep.
That's being down in the trenches and finding out what you're really made of, because there's no easy path. And it just seems like you try something to get knocked back down, you get back up. You try something to get knocked back down, you get back up. And it's that repetitive cycle. And when you go through that enough times, then you understand what your real strengths are, and you know not to make the same mistake over and over. And that's where the real growth as a human being comes from, is getting knocked back down and getting back up and then moving forward. And that's just, I always said I'll be sliding into home base when I'm done with this game.
Well, it was a very enjoyable podcast. If the listeners want to get a hold of you, can you give them some contact information on where to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple places. Everything is the same across the board. So if you go to Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, everything is Derek L Hendricks, Derek, the letter L, last name Hendricks, Hendricks. So DerekLHendricks.com. That's the same thing on Instagram. You can actually find out the information about how we're helping entrepreneurs, specifically wellness entrepreneurs. And we really found our niche in helping gym owners, anybody who's in the physical fitness world. That's just a place that we love to play, and we help them run their ads. So if you go to DerekLHendricks.com, and I'll tell you what, I actually was on the Funnel Hacker Radio podcast, and I created a free report that people can actually model 7 ways and actually to grow their wellness business. So if they want to go to entrepreneurialsalesecrets.com/funnelhacker, they can actually opt in and get that free download.
That's awesome. And if anyone has difficulty getting a hold of you, they can always reach out to me at lifecoachingandbeyond.com, and all my information is there. Derek, I hope you come back again as a guest, and it was my pleasure. Thank you for listening to the Revolutionize podcast. Have a great day.
Thanks, Peggy. Aloha.